how are you? And welcome along to talkTV's Tackle This. My name's Shebahn Aherne, and with me today to go through this debate, Alfred Reynolds from Talksport and Martin Lipton from The Sun. An interesting weekend in the FA Cup and a very interesting weekend at Old Trafford, and we're here to debate, will players learn from Chris Kavanagh's refereeing decisions at the weekend? Of course, it comes from the three sending off from the Fulham players and the manager in the space of 1 minute against Manchester United. Before we get into the debate, it was box office, wasn't it?
It was brilliant, wasn't it?
It was amazing.
I mean, I couldn't believe it. I messaged my Fulham supporting friend immediately and thought, what on earth has just happened? You're away at Old Trafford, FA Cup tie, trip to Wembley in the semi-final on the line, and they just imploded. From a neutral's point of view, it was brilliant.
It was. Martin?
It was bizarre. It was remarkable. And I'm sure it was very, very entertaining for everyone except the Fulham fans who were watching. But also, I think what we saw out of it is the line that has to be drawn over player indiscipline, because I am sick to the back teeth of referees being hounded, of managers and players thinking that they have the right to go feral on the pitch and on the sidelines. And for once, a referee has shown the right attitude, brook no argument, made his decision, and the consequences are going to be significant for both Aleksandar Mitrovic and his club, and that's about time.
Is that a lack of experience ever so slightly, Alfie? Being so close to a semi-final in the FA Cup for Fulham, where they're at this season, did the red mist just come down, and should Mitrovic be forgiven for that?
Oh, did the red mist come down? Yeah, clearly. I don't think it's down to experience. Mitrovic is too experienced a player. He's previously had kind of incredibly competitive streak in him, if we want to be kind to it. But forgiven, I don't think the Fulham fans should hold it over him forever. But equally, I think they're well within their rights to say we were close to a historic FA Cup semi-final and you completely lost your head. Marco Silva as well, who kind of, you could argue, got the ball rolling. I mean, Willian gets sent off, it's a handball, it's a penalty, but Marco Silva doesn't help the situation. He inflames it, and then Mitrovic reacts further to that as well. It was bonkers. To Martin's point, though, I just think, whilst I agree that it would be great if this changed behaviour, if people learn from this, this is more than just Premier League footballers and their behaviour towards referees. It is an issue, I think, across every layer of the game, from the grassroots up towards the behaviour of referees. The players won't change. It is so ingrained into football culture and into those players to behave that way towards referees. I would be amazed if they change their behaviour off the back of what we've seen and how Chris Kavanagh dealt with it.
If Mitrovic does get an 8 or 10 game ban, you would like to think that players will really second guess and take a second look at themselves before they get in a ref's face ever again.
Well, you would hope so. I mean, I think the problem is that they might not, but there has to be strong punishment. That's the key. Kavanagh has reported already, not just the shove, but also what was said to him and that was actually worse than the shoving minutes, because he's been shown the red card and has outrageously shown dissent in the face of the referee, screaming at him, barking at him, virtually, spittle coming out. It's just, you can't have that. It's unacceptable. And too much latitude, too much leeway. We've had, managers running up and down the touchline, sarcastically applauding referees when they give a decision they like and moaning about every decision they don't like. None of them accept that decisions are taken. There are far fewer wrong decisions now than there's ever been before, and yet there's far less acceptance of decisions than there's ever been before. And that's just plain wrong. And what you see on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon on Sky and Match of the Day is repeated every Saturday morning and every Sunday morning on Hackney Marshes and every other park pitch in the country. And unless there's a strong line, a strong determination, a strong sanction, it will continue and it will get worse. And we'll end up with no referees for any of these games because you've got 14, 15, 16-year-old kids getting abused from the touchlines by parents and players. And it's sickening and it has to stop. And if it doesn't stop at the top, it will never stop at the bottom.
Partly it can provide entertainment, can't it? And that's not fair at the expense of an official. However, Alfie makes a good point. This is football, this is sport. It can get so emotional. How do you take the emotion out of a player?
Well, I just don't know how you change it at the moment. I think me and Martin are probably aligned in that we'd like to see it change, but my point is it just won't. the coaches aren't going to coach their players to stop diving. They're not going to coach their players to stop trying to influence and pressurise referees. Managers themselves aren't going to stop that behaviour, as you point out, on the touchline, because often it can work, and it's such a part of the game. I think the players might learn not to raise their hands to a referee if they didn't know that already. But beyond that, I think depressingly, things won't change.
It's so inconsistent as well, because a couple of weeks ago, Bruno Fernandes put his hands on an official and nothing was done about it. You kind of can't help but look at context in that situation. They were 7-0 down and there was a frustration element, not an elephant. But with Mitrovic showing the frustration at what was a red card to the player to put a hand on a ball, that has to stop. But I don't know how you're going to see that change.
Well, I think there is a difference with Fernandes, because in that situation he was grabbed by the assistant. Now he then swung round and was basically responding to his quotes assailant without actually realising who it was. I think if he'd known it was the lino, he might not have acted in the same way. And what you have to say is that both PGMOL, the referees organisation, and the FA agree that it was a reaction to something that shouldn't have happened. Now he could easily have been sent off for it, in truth. But I think personally a booking would have been about right on that one. But if he had been sent off, it wouldn't have been changed. It would have still been the ban. But I do think you have to have strength from the authorities. And this will be, a test of the FA disciplinary process. So we know that there's going to be an independent commission set up now. And unless you do it, unless you give those punishments, you won't be able to stop this behaviour being repeated. So I think it's incumbent upon everyone, and it's also incumbent upon Fulham, to not try and give a mealy-mouthed defence for Mitrovic, which is what we got last night from Marco Silva, trying to justify, he was frustrated. That's no excuse. You should be saying, that was unacceptable and we will fine the player, not we're going to defend him. That's just rubbish. And if you keep having that, you'll never get a change. And there has to be, at some point, an area where the clubs and the managers take some responsibility rather than just looking to blame anybody but themselves.
It's a strong argument you make there, and I like your passion, to be fair, because it's not nice to see hands put on anybody. And we all know Mitrovic is a character, and that could have been quite an intimidating moment for a referee. It could have been in that atmosphere as well. Alfie, the debate is, will players learn from Mitrovic's mistakes? Will they learn from the tough decisions of Chris Kavanagh to send off 3 Fulham people yesterday in that game? But do you see that changing for other players in other games going forward?
I don't think players will learn. As I said, I think they might get a reminder that they can't raise their hands towards officials. But beyond that, I don't think their behaviour will change in terms of how they get in referees' faces and all that sort of stuff. They've been doing it so long. It's such a part of the game. I think, Martin, you talk about it being the clubs and the FA and does this need to come from FIFA almost? Because I'm just kind of thinking, all right, let's say that English football tries to wipe this out. What happens when players then go to play in European competitions or in international tournaments? It has to be wiped out across the globe.
And it's not, because
and that
actually,
is a huge task.
There was a game at the weekend in South Africa, I'm sure, where a referee had a full-blown moment with a player. I mean, he was about 6'4", this ref. You wouldn't have crossed him, but he went in on that player. And it was a moment of him taking authority, but it's different kinds of authority. And that referee, Chris Kavanagh, had somebody put hands on him, a wee bit of force, you would say, and he showed his authority in that moment. He controlled his controllables at that moment in time.
Exactly, and that's what you need. You need the referees to stay calm in those moments, because others aren't staying calm. We know that. And there will be times when there's a sense of righteous indignation, and sometimes actually be rightful indignation at a decision that's gone against you. Not on this occasion, that's what made it worse in many ways. Yeah, I think there's an argument that there needs to be leadership, but look, the laws of the game are there. They are clear. The disciplinary framework, though, is independent on each national association, each competition can determine its disciplinary framework. So FIFA can say this should be a 3-game ban, minimum. Well, that's what it is. But it's up to the FA in this country, or the SFA, or whoever it might be, or UEFA, to impose the requisite punishments. And I would think the better thing would be for them to actually rack it up, what those punishments will be. It should be a minimum of 8 games if you put your hands on an official. Because then players, even if they're tempted, will think, I don't want to miss 8 games. If you really raise the bar for the punishment, then you've got a chance of changing, unfortunately. It isn't carrot and stick, it's got to be stick and stick in football.
Okay, so you would like to see the FA make an example of Mitrovic, so all other players will take from that. Alfie, your thoughts will be they can impose 8 to 10 game ban on Mitrovic, but players aren't going to change.
Yeah, I think they also need to impose longer bans or more punishment for the other stuff in the game. How often do we see players raise their hands to officials? It's actually not that often. I know it's been in the spotlight a little bit this season with the 2 incidents we've spoken about, but they have to do more about all those things we've mentioned as well. The players gathering around referees or that sort of thing, the punishment for those types of things, that needs to be higher as well.
And it seems like it's not going anywhere at this moment in time. I feel like I have to side with Alfie in this and say that I don't think players will change off the back of Mitrovic's actions at the weekend. And Chris Kavanagh's decent refereeing and taking authority, I still think football is football and these players will not learn. Alfie, it's 1-0. Sorry, Martin.
Can I appeal to the FA?